Like you are. Good morning, United Kingdom. Sorry about the delay. I was just getting the propeller glued back onto the helicopter. Anyhow, good morning, everyone. And as usual, we have Lakhi Singh, the property fixer, the ixer, the mixer, the dixer, the rixer, the prixer, that's going to go in the wrong direction, moonwalker. And we have the famous Ninder Singh Johar, as usual. Friday is a special day for us. We all sort of look forward for the whole week. But I've had lots of females on this week, Ninder, to let you know. So I've not really missed you that much. I was actually planning on getting a good-looking female on today as well. But okay.
Well, that might be the fact that you look like a rock star with your sunglasses. So that's
in it. He's right.
That's probably why you get that type of guest. But anyway, yeah. So, Mr. Rockstar, I'm all listening.
Done. Right. Okay. We're now plugged in, and apologies. Right. Talking about the saying of the week. The saying of the week is either you need it bad enough. Cut making excuses. That's generally what it means. Don't make excuses for things that you don't really want. If you really want it, you will get it. That's the way it is. Okay, so Ninder Singh Saab, an announcement this week that there's going to be the vaccine being released. I think in a couple of, next week? Is it? And it's going to be available to the public on a certain priority base. So before we ask you what you think about it and why and how, and is this going to be the awaited solution to the virus, I'm going to ask Lakhi Singh, do you need it that bad? And if you don't, did you ever start making excuses?
Are you talking about the vaccine or talking about the quote of the week?
No, I don't want to make excuses for the vaccine. I'm talking about the weekend. Saying of the weekend, did you ever need it that bad? And are you making excuses?
Yeah, I think I've always been making excuses because if I wasn't making excuses, then things would be a different story, wouldn't it? So I think we all have outer layers and inner layers. Getting rid of them and elevating yourself to look beyond your excuses and getting rid of them is actually like a daily exercise. I think if you're not working on yourself daily, then reality is mediocrity.
Excelente. Right. So we've got somebody who's not a media.
Before we go on, I wanted to make a point today. I'm wearing a special turban. This is one that was given to me by one of my uncles in Punjab, one of the farmers. So we're sending out some love to all the farmers in Punjab and in India. All of them who are now up against quite a difficult situation. I'm going to let maybe Ninder Singh give us a bit of his input later on. I'll let you continue, VJ. I don't want to.
Okay, sir. I will take that message, and we will. I'm definitely sure we're always with the weak and the impoverished. We're there, the people who need us, rather than the super rich. But talking of being successful, being someone who is there, who's fixing things on a music entertainment front, Ninder Singh, sir, have you ever made excuses when you needed something, and was it because you didn't really need it bad enough? Has that come across to you ever?
I tell you, this morning, I got a really good quote. Let me read the quote out to you. And it's just amazing that you've asked me the question. So the quote says, "It's your road and yours alone. Others may walk it with you, but no one can walk it for you."
Excelente.
Now, I'm amazed you asked the question because I was just looking at it. And I think you're absolutely right. I think if you want something badly enough, you will go for it. I think if you made excuses, you didn't really want it that badly. Because if you badly, for example, in my case, I badly wanted Bhangra music to cross the charts. and it took me 10 years to do it, but I badly wanted it. And in the end, I got what I wanted. But, and you know, when people are selling me stuff, I can tell the ones who badly want to sell it to me and those who don't, because there's a persistence about them. And you've got to admire persistence. And I think people do admire persistence. So I think, and I think it's very good what Lakhi said. Sometimes it's about habits. And if you get into good habits and habits that remove the reason or the excuse, then you're more likely to succeed. So really, it's down to mindset. It's down to resilience, persistence, mindset, and having a dream that you're going to go for. If the dream is big enough, Mr. Sal, if the dream is big enough, you won't need to find excuses. You'll go for it.
If the dream is big enough, right? That's a big big widget there. Lakhi Singh, right? A lot of information's come out of Ninder Singh there. Lots of important things have said. I'm going to dissect them with you and just go back and say, right, have you in any part of your life thought you needed something, thought you wanted something, but you didn't really? Resilience, the same as persistence, and is persistence different to Lakhi Singh?
Cutting out. But I understand the question. Is the resilience and persistence? Which ones? What's the difference? And have I had that situation myself come up? Is that what you're asking? If you think internet's not, the Wi-Fi is probably not working on your side, but I think I've got the question. So do you want to log in and log back out again, if you can?
Who's that, me?
Yes.
Yeah, you can't hear you.
Should we try again?
I can actually continue with the question in the meantime. So resilience and persistence, what's the difference? And have I been in that situation, I think is the gist of the question based upon the bits I picked up. To be honest, I don't really know much the difference between the two. I think as far as I'm concerned, resilience and persistence is quite similar. I can't see the difference between the two words, resilience and persistence. Have I been in that situation where I've had to be more resilient? Yes, many a time, and persistent. I'd probably say I probably feel like myself I am probably the most persistent person I know anyway, in every way. So I'm always on it, trying to be persistent anyway. So I think that's my answer. Are you back on, VJ Sal?
Yes, can you hear me now properly?
Yeah.
You can, yeah. We can still see you as well.
Lost it.
Yes.
Yeah, I think.
Can you hear me? I can hear you guys perfectly fine. You guys, I can hear perfectly fine. I can hear you perfectly fine. Can you hear me?
We can see you and hear you.
Perfectly fine.
We can see you and hear you, which is most unfortunate.
Yeah. Can you hear us? Okay. Ninder, sir, the question is, Lakhi seems to say that resilience and persistence are the same. I don't think so. What do you say? And where do you go with the word?
I think resilience refers to overcoming setbacks and being able to say, okay, that's a setback, but I'll keep going. So example, a lot of people are struggling with the pandemic, the whole mental well-being, and it's whether they're now resilient enough to get through it. And it's whether retailers and people who run hospitality, whether they've got the resilience to keep them going past this sort of problems of COVID. And I think persistence is just keep hammering away at whatever you're doing. So I think they're slightly different. I think resilience is having the mindset to keep going even when everything around you is possibly falling apart. And resilience probably also is recovering from a setback. So if you've had one or number of setbacks, have you got the mental resilience to pick yourself up and go for it again? And some people are persistent without having to gone through any dark moments, which really does test them. And I think you tend to learn more from your dark moments than you are from your successes. Then you know how to accelerate in the future. And I've had some dark moments, so I know what it's like.
Yes.
Mr. Salim, you're breaking up again, my friend.
Some dirty dark moments. Yeah, and I'm going to try and re-log in. You guys continue, and I'm going to try and re-log in.
Actually,
again.
we can hear you now, so it may be worth staying on. But why don't you do sign language and make up an answer, question, I mean, and then we have to try and guess what you're asking in sign language. We can hear you fine, mate.
Excellent. Right. Okay. So, my definition of resilience is the process on which you become persistent. The reason being, resilience only means somewhere you're being rejected, but you have the energy to get back on your horse. Whereas persistence is more about the long journey, the fact that you have sight of your goal. Resilience is about the short-term positions in getting to the goal. And when you talk about thick-skinned, that probably relates more to entertainment than it relates to possibly a professional environment. So I want to ask you, Ninder Singh, have you come across people who are thick-skinned as opposed to being resilient and persistent?
Yeah, I think if you're in politics, I think you have to be thick-skinned. I think if you're in positions of public scrutiny, I think you have to be thick-skinned. I think if you're in the entertainment industry and you're...
Lost everyone. So we're no longer there. Let me just see if I can plug in.
We can actually hear each other fine and see each other fine.
That's good. That's good.
We can hear you fine as well.
Excellent. Right. Okay. Ninderji, continue, sir.
Yeah. So just to repeat. So politicians, those people who are public facing, so therefore open to scrutiny, they have to have thick skin. I think those in entertainment, where they have to perform to an audience, have to be thick-skinned, and probably not every show they do will be as successful as the other one, so they need to be thick-skinned and resilient. But yeah, anybody who's public-facing, I think, certainly needs to be thick-skinned.
Okay, Lakhi Singh, public-facing, that's what Ninder says. It's all about the public. It's all about what people perceive of you. Is it really? What about the people around you, Lakhi, the ones who know you, who know your every action, your every body movement, your body language, your moves? Are you having to be persistent there and resilient, or are you just ducking and diving and trying to look for excuses?
Like you said in the beginning, you just got to understand where your excuses are and where your reality is. But if you can't distinguish the two, then you are heading towards insanity. So I think understanding the difference between the two can get a bit muddled if you've got a lot going on. So that actually is the answer to the question. But I think so being true to your internal team and the people that you're working with on a daily basis, and actually being very clear, joined up with them, is not always easy, especially if you've got a lot of, huge workload, or you've got you're making moves. So I think actually having clarity over your framework or your working framework on a daily basis is critical. But if you haven't got that, you've got bad communication. Yeah, it's going to lead to sort of disjointed working in businesses. Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's also probably your reaction to whatever people say. So how do you react to people who are close to you who say something, as opposed to somebody who's more distant or even totally remote? How do you react to whatever they say? And I suppose it's your ability to react positively, irrespective of who they are, will determine.
I think that's important. I think proximity makes a difference. But I know people who get annoyed or angry or frustrated or somewhat saddened by the comments of people on a social media platform that they don't even know properly. How does that work, Lakhi Singh?
Well, I think the social media is quite a powerful platform, and we don't realize the type of impact it has. So some people are stuck at home, they may not be the very outgoing people, so the only means of communication to the outside world is their mobile telephone. If they're not really communicating that, using that as a tool for creating friendships or otherwise, then social media is a route in. But you get a lot of random people on there, and a lot of things are also said. So you get extreme views from some being very, very polite and very interested in wanting to know you, and others actually being completely the opposite. So I've put some posts up sometimes, but they've been completely misconstrued, and people have said, okay, why have you written this? This is ridiculous, and become political all of a sudden. And then I've sometimes people have sort of met me in Mayfair because they've seen me on there and said, oh yeah, you said this about that. Why did you say that? That's not really a good thing to say. This was sort of done about 7 months ago in a small storm in a teacup type conversation where you just being in the internet and getting engagement's important for your audiences. But just so if you making 1,000 comments in a week, one comment that you've put down while you just open up for something you haven't really thought about, just to sort of make sure there's a continuity of message, could actually lead to a massive argument on the internet. And actually those sort of things get really crazy. You might end up getting a couple of 100 comments about something that you said and may not have actually understood the context at the time.
Road of being resilient and being consistent, or being persistent rather, because you've got a goal. So the question to that answer is yes. If you really want it that bad, you will be persistent, you will be resilient. Now, this goes back to, we've gone from an individual's thinking. I'm coming across now to a group of people, a country, a nation. Is the resilience of the British nation the reason we're probably first to get the vaccine? Ninder sir, because you're more attuned with rubbing shoulders with the people in government, what do you say? Is it about the resilience of the United Kingdom, the nation? Is that why we've got the vaccine out first? Or is it something else?
No, I think simply the government just placed the order at the moment they knew there was something coming down the track. The resilience you're asking about now be tested on two fronts. It'll be tested on how well we cope with whatever Brexit brings us. That will test our resilience. What will also be tested is between now and when the vaccine is rolled out, how we cope with the different tiers. That will test our resilience. We will be tested to how many people agree to have their vaccine or to take the vaccine. That will test our resilience. How quick the economy recovers will test our resilience. So there's a number of things that will test us as the British sort of nation as to how we recover back and get onto our feet and lead to a recovery in the economic states.
Excellent. Right. I see a very important, today sounds like one of those days that everything Ninder says has about 50 foot of depth in it, and we just have to work out where he's coming from. Lakhi Singh, did you catch in between that little epitaph the fact that how quickly people will agree to have the vaccine? That is also resilience. So what do you say to that statement, Lakhi? Are people going to be given an option? Will you take this vaccine? Or is it going to be, you will have the vaccine, otherwise you're going to endanger everybody else? What do you think? Is it a resilience matter, or is it governmental policy?
That's quite a tough question. I think I'm sort of reserving comment on that, like a true politician. But joking aside, I think there is a lot of skepticism about vaccinations, because there's a lot of bad press about vaccinations that's been going around for the last 7-8 months or so, saying, you know, that
what type of bad press? Fill us in.
People are worried about being the identity.
You have to fill us in. Give us the details, Mr. Singh. You can't make light-hearted statements of something so important. What bad press about the vaccine? People are dying. How can
basically, this is pre the vaccine coming out. A lot of people being scaremongering, saying, you know, we don't really want to be controlled, and what are the side effects? So there's a lot of skepticism around it. But I think the type of assurance
Sir, how can a needle and a few millis of vaccine control you? How ridiculous!
I think the question people are asking is, and we certainly asked the question from an event side, is will people be allowed into events if they can't prove they've had a vaccine? People are saying you may be stopped.
Ninder, sir, everything that's coming out from your deep thinking is sounding as if we've got Boris Johnson on with us today. Now, that again is another very big statement. The first one was, will people agree to take the vaccine? Now is, does the vaccine give you permission? Are we going down the road of having special cards and permissions, maybe a stamp on the forehead, I'm vaccinated? What do you say, Ninder? How do you answer that question? Why do you say that?
Okay, so there's rumors that airlines might adopt the same strategy, which is if you haven't had a vaccine, we're not letting you on. Other people are suggesting you walk around with tests to prove on consecutive days. So I think it's going to get very messy. The government is going to have to work out a way to do this. In other words, one, is it imposed on us? Question one. Two, do we have the freedom to say yes or no? And if you do you then get discriminated against because you have or you haven't? Thirdly, it'll be determined by the distribution. So, you know, who gets it first? When do they get it? At what point in the distribution are we in a position to say, have you accepted it or rejected it? Because for a period of time, we won't have access to it anyway. So I think there's a lot of complications around what the government wants to do, what business people want to do. Because if I'm running a big event of 600 people, am I going to be more comfortable only letting in people who've had a vaccine and not? And by the way, is it my responsibility or is it the venue like Park Lane Hilton? Is it their responsibility to make sure? And remember, even with lockdown, pub owners had to ask you to put your address and name down to prove who you were. So there was a certain amount of policing going on behalf of the government, even during lockdown and the tier system. So, you know, the vaccine, of course, is another issue. That's around health and whether people want to take it. But people are saying, I tell you one rumor I heard, is employers may say to new recruits, we're not going to give you a job unless you've had a jab. So that could be interesting. Could you not having had a jab stop you getting
lots of warts, lots of spots, acne spots with lots of pus in them coming out there. What do you say, Lakhi Singh? Are you going to have a vaccine? And would you accept a stamp on your forehead says that you've been vaccinated? Or would you rather have something stamped in a more private part of your body?
To be honest with you, I don't really mind being vaccinated. It's not like a big issue. But I think there's a bit of a sort of personal concern, meaning that for other people, because there's a lot of people that may not be able to have it. They may have an ailment. They may not be so keen because it could actually make the ailment worse because it's not been tested widely enough, I don't think, to the point that I would say it's 100% safe. So there may be reluctancy. So I feel for the people that may not actually be able to have it or want to have it, and how do we deal with that? Because it's a bit of a it's quite a difficult situation for some people. But I think going back to Ninder's point about whether people should be allowed in or not, based upon whether it's the owner of the establishment's responsibility, whether it's your responsibility as an individual. I think there's going to be a transition point, because you've got 65 million people in the UK. You're going to be immunized 65 million people overnight. Is going to be a time period. And judging upon the government's record in terms of just keeping on top of testing, that's not even vaccinating. That testing process is a lot easier. I'm not sure what percentage of the population actually has been tested and how that process, how effective that's been. I don't think it's been effective. They can't do that in 7-8 months for 65 million people. I can't see the vaccination happening the whole of next year. For every individual, it's not going to happen. The chances are, my guess is that if we hit 20 to 30% of the UK population by the middle of next year, that would be a miracle. So,
okay. Ninder ji, let's suppose. I mean, what Lakhi's talking about is the practice. The ground realities of maybe concerns, the way they're going to look at it. Will people accept it? X, Y, Z. Are there going to be qualities of this vaccine? I mean, a VVIP like yourself, are you going to get like the real refined version? And somebody who's a commoner like me, I'm going to get the one that's mixed up with Lucozade or something. Is that going to be the case?
I may know a little bit about business, but I certainly know nothing about medicine and how they distribute medicine. I suspect for you, Mr. Salim, they'll probably send it by helicopter for you. You're such a VVIP. So we you how it was delivered to you before we mere mortals get it.
You reckon I'll get it before you? Well, let's have a bet then, Lakhi Singh. Which one of us gets it first? Yes?
I think knowing VJ Sal with his connection.
I'm not talking about anything else. I'm talking about the vaccine, Lakhi. Which one of us gets vaccine first?
I reckon it'll be Ninder Singh.
I reckon so. I reckon he's got special reserves in his fridge right next to the Lucozade bottles, and he's just waiting for him to say, yeah, you can use it. He'll be drinking it down as well. So, Ninder Singh, sir, is it going to be possible to have this vaccine delivered over 65 million? What does the government say? I know you are a whisperer, a gentleman who's got his ear to the ground and his nose to the wire. What do you say? What are people in the halls of power saying? How are they going to deliver 65 million? If there's 65 million of us left next year, we don't know. But those who are going to be lucky enough to be around and those who are going to be unlucky, or maybe in that process that they're in bed, they're in the hospital waiting for the vaccine, I think, will those people fuss about getting the vaccine? I think it's going to be a different mindset, isn't it? For somebody who's in that state of flux because of the virus, they'll probably say, look, give it to me and give it to me in both hands. Tell me, sir, what do you say? Are we going to get 5 million vaccines this year?
So I think the way they go, the vaccine will be on the most vulnerable. So the most vulnerable tend to be in care homes. So they're going to focus on the ones who will get it, who are most likely to be affected. Exactly your point. So they're going to target, I think, from the oldest and the most vulnerable, and then move down the chain. So it won't be geographical. It won't be, we'll go to London or Birmingham or Cardiff.
It could be VJ Sal first. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Belated joke, Lakhi Singh. You didn't have timing in entertainment, Lakhi Singh. It's timing. You butted in while Ninder Singh was telling us something important. So the joke didn't work. We'll do it again, and I'll say on you, my friend. Yes, Ninder sir, continue.
Yeah, so I think the distribution will be based on the most vulnerable. Then they'll work down, and then so I think that they'll have some kind of database to work it down. So I think they're going to start with the vulnerable first. Then, like you said, they'll work into the hospitals. From the hospitals, then they'll work to the next age group, and I think that's the way to do it. It will
do it from critical to least critical. Lakhi Singh, doesn't that slap in the face of people who've got a conspiracy theories about all this, that this is population cleansing going on? Doesn't that slap in the face of those people with those theories? Think it's a governmental, some trick by the government to get rid of the excess, the burden on pensions, the burden on the social system?
Yeah, I think the conspiracy theorists are going to say, well, they're trying to kill off the oldest people first with the vaccine.
How can they be protecting them?
That government, at a UK-wide point of view, governments have been known to aid and abet actually doing things which are against, say, humanitarianism, for nearly every decade that's actually existed in the last, millions of years, I would say, or however long that governments have been around.
Yeah,
I mean, the film that I watched a couple of days ago with Edgar Hoover and really the head of the FBI and really what he got up to. I watched another film just yesterday about what's the name of it? Was like it? So yeah, it's Edgar Hoover. Sorry, one was Hoover, and the other one was Cheney, Dick Cheney. It was a bit of a sort of slapstick, somewhat comedy because it had a couple of sort of comedian actors on there. But the type of things that they were doing leading up to Iraq were completely ridiculous. They were almost like laughable in terms of the type of lies that were made up to be able to convince the population that there were literally people out there that were Al-Qaeda when there was no Al-Qaeda at all. So they actually use focus groups to try and work out how they're going to position the war to be able to get the war done. And this is actually like the most serious part of the whole conversation here, is that before even Iraq was attacked, or even considered to be a threat, Dick Cheney himself had made a list of all the power companies that could be going into Iraq and supplying services. About 3 years before, least 2 to 3 years before the event. So I think that's the concern for people. If that's the sort of things that can happen, then is there something behind this that they don't know about? Because the trust between a common person on the street and the government is dependent on their history of really the things that have been done, and there's lots of historical evidence of mistakes.
I mean, surely isn't this sort of like Maslow's theory type of thing, and theory of control, and the theory of the hierarchy, and the same person who's on the street is the person in government. So surely, what is it that's happening to these people when they get employed in government? All of a sudden, they start looking down at the public as if they're minuscule minions. I mean, let's ask Ninder, because he is mixing and rubbing shoulders with people who make policy and people who have that type of information. Were you looking at the power grid in Iraq before Iraq happened, Ninder Singh? Did you know about Iraq happening?
Okay, a couple of things. I think one of the problems, and I can only talk about this country, around government policies, that too often it's been determined by people who live in London. So these are graduates, probably from Oxbridge, who've gone into the civil service, and then sitting remotely from London will determine what the North, like Manchester, Liverpool, they need, the Midlands. And what they're now trying to do is they're trying to disperse the various ministries so that they get an idea of what people outside of London want. So it's the dispersion of the sort of mindset of what these people do. So you're right. Now the second problem has been that what government has tried to do was what we call devolve power. In other words, set up mayors, so the mayors are responsible. But the problem then, what they found out, and it's around COVID, the mayor of Manchester went to war with Boris Johnson over how much money they should get during COVID. And I think Boris Johnson then thought, actually, this devolved power business isn't very good, because instead of me controlling, I've let the control out. So it is about power, it is about influence, and it's about control. But if this country, just like any other country, is going to work, you're going to have to devolve the power to the people who live there, because they know how best to spend it.
Right. Okay. That's a very it's a very political solution, I say, to the problem in deliverance. I would say to you, look, this is something that's on record, and it's not conspiracy theory. This hasn't come from any special friend of mine in government that's giving me tidbits. There's something called the Freedom of Information Act. And I think every 30 years or 40 years, I'm not sure the lifetime.
25 years.
Pardon?
25 years.
25 years.
25 years.
Lots of governmental files, policies, strategies even, that the government has implemented in the past are released, and it depends on who's reading what and how they search that information. They come up to knowing what has happened. But there's lots of things that have come out from the Freedom of Information Act. If you read them in detail now, they would read like one of those bad Hollywood movies, like a Matt Damon movie made in Bollywood. So is it as bad as we think it is, that we've got conspiracy theories, or is there something underlying happening? I mean, my thing is very simple. Why was it such a swift move to close down the entire global economy so quickly, when at the end of the day, we didn't know the real extent of this virus, not until at least June, July? And I mean, normal circumstances, you'd expect them to continue to try and fight the virus on different levels, but not shut down the entire world economy. Lakhi, what do you say to that, sir?
Well, I think that question is way above my pay grade, meaning that us actually being, normal day-to-day people, we have no ability to look into the brain of the powers that
We're going to
be.
shout out before we go
And I
back
think
to Ninder.
Yeah.
Gurmail Singh, John. Yeah.
Mandy Smith as well saying shout out. Good morning to everybody earlier.
I've got Mandy there, John Smith. I've got Gurmail Singh. I've got Mr. Noor making his moves as usual. In Cotton is a new listener, I think, giving it a shout out. Continue,
so
sir.
I'm just saying that it's very difficult to understand really what's behind anything, because there are a lot of geopolitics. There's a lot of power with the banks and a lot of influence. I mean, if you just saw the film even based upon a true story called The Big Short, and various other documentaries about some of the collapses in the markets, some of them actually tell a very deep sort of sense of power in terms of the people actually having more influence and actually deciding things in a whim, rather in terms of what they want to do, as opposed to taking any sort of policy based upon what the population wants. It's actually 99% based upon their own manipulation of what they want the population to do. And I think
the saying that ultimate power corrupts. I mean, ultimately, you give so much control to one person, and is it not going to be? I mean, not everybody is going to be, Abraham Lincoln. There's going to be people there who are going to influence. Big money plays a big role now. You've got big business that runs governments. And, it's not hidden, nothing hidden, it's fact that big business runs government. Government doesn't run big business. And the fact that big business is run by the banks. So is there a manipulation going on, Ninder? Do you feel there's a conjunction here? Is it coincidental that it keeps happening every 100 years? This virus, it happened in the early 1900s. Then you've got the Boer War, you've got the Second World War. People are saying there's going to be a world war now. They're saying there's going to be a major event in Europe. Something's going to trigger a war. You're going to have a financial meltdown. We're going to have big currency. Come on, is this all coming? Is it getting to that now? Isn't it? Aren't there so many things happening at the same time that it can't just be put down to circumstance?
Okay, so a couple of things. Everything that happens because of people and human behavior. That triggers everything. So let's go back to January, February. We were hearing about China. Most people ignored it. And then obviously the panic started when the deaths started to come. And this is for the first time it became a question of science versus the economy. Which was more important, the science or the economy? Then what came up, and this is why there was this sort of disjointed international response to this, and it was disjointed, is the politicians do what they do, which is they think about elections, and they think about votes, and they think about reputation. So they think about their own backyard than what else is happening. And no prime minister or president wants to be remembered for hundreds of thousands of deaths. So Trump decided to ignore it and said, I want the economy to flourish because that's my best chance of getting re-elected. The Brazilian president completely ignored COVID. Both of those countries had high levels of COVID. And I think there was, and you are right, there was the tension between the economic health of a country versus its people. And that was the tension. And this is where the science came forward, and the science gave projections of deaths and things. And the scientists said the only way you're going to avoid this is to have lockdowns. So most right-wing leaders found that a problem. and tended to ignore it. Left-leaning economies like New Zealand, Labour in there, tended to embrace what the scientists were saying, and that's why.
Okay, you're an advisor to government. So you're an advisor to government. I assume possibly even 10 down indirectly or directly. Where is where is the cutoff point? Where's the kickoff point on the vaccine, and where will the cutoff point be? How are they going to manage the fact that you got 65 million? We understand it's going to be done in stages. Where will the cutoff be? Where will they say, right, no more vaccine? Are the vaccines that we do have not sufficient?
Okay, so I think they're going to continue to focus on the R. Remember the R figure they look at. So they're going to continue to monitor the number of infections. They're going to continue to monitor people in hospitals. And at the same time, they're going to be monitoring the rollout of the vaccine. Until people stop going to hospitals, people stop dying, the R value starts to come down. So it's almost like a Venn diagram. When does everything come together?
Which value did you say? The R value?
Yeah. So they're going to focus on the R value. They're going to focus on the number of infections per 100,000 people. They're going to focus on the number of people in hospital. If all those things start to go down whilst the vaccine's going up, at some point, the two are going to cross and they're going to say, well, okay. And I think that the classic one will be when social distancing disappears. The moment they say,
okay,
we haven't got the 2 meter, the 1 meter social distancing because R's gone down, hospitalization's gone down, number of deaths gone down, number of infections per 100,000 people. The number's 20 they look at, and most regions are in the hundreds. So I think
100.
Once
Lakhi Singh.
starts to come in.
Okay, Lakhi Singh, can you tell me, please, the financial industry? Obviously, it's in a bit of a flux at the moment. Is the financial industry, the banks, are they going to keep their eye on this R syndrome, on this R number, on this R, stat? That help? Do the banks operate as normal, or are the banks going to be becoming more internet and more virtual in effects, and they don't really care where the R number is? They're just going to continue, and you're going to come out the other side with a new way of doing business in the banks.
I think the banks have already gone through a major transition over the last 20 years in terms of online banking. But I think because of the nature of things, with the minimum people being out, at least for the next year, I say, they're actually, and with a very, let's just say, zombie economy for the next 2 years with £1 trillion of the debt to pay off, I can only see it going one way. I mean, I think Ninder and I often talk about the numbers. The banks just have to carry out a process. They need to make a profit, and they're just going to have to, dramatically cut down their costs. It's not down to COVID-19, actually. I think it's generally they're not in profit, and I think they were doomed anyway from a point of view. There's a point of inflection point where they are in serious debt, so they're not able to raise funds easily because of a lot of laws or legislations that's been put in terms of the amount of money they can borrow compared to the deposits they hold. So they've got certain checks and balances. Which
you're talking about the banking, the gearing ratio with the banks. Yeah. You're talking about the gearing ratio, yeah.
Right. So I think that the only way is that they've got to cut staff. They've got to cut branches. Sorry.
There's not going to be any new money in the market, you're saying?
I think very little new money. It's going to be very tight for the next 2 years, I think, because they are, literally the only areas which are making money at the moment are growth areas, which is fintech, which is online, and they're going to have to go online. And those are the areas which are now dramatically sort of rising, sort of tripling So Amazon, I think, is now, I don't know, how much is it worth now? Maybe 300 billion or something ridiculous. Yeah.
300 billion?
Yeah.
Okay.
Plus.
Sir, let's just go over to Ninder now, because obviously you're putting us asleep. Ninder, you've got a situation. You're talking about, we were talking about people, population, the governments, right, at the lower level. Tell me how government is planning to operate, because obviously governments have policies, have procedures, need to talk and interact with their population. Are you saying government's going to change its style of working? Are we going to see the good old days of going into the council thinking like you're back in a third world country, trying to get through to the department who's held back your benefits? Or is it all going to become online now?
I think, let me just quickly just remind people, particularly on property in terms of finance. I think interest rates have been low for a while. Interest rates will be low for another couple of years. That means banks' ability to make money because of low interest rates is not as much. They will continue to look at every proposal from a business perspective. In other words, can these people pay their money back? They'll always do that. They'll always look at affordability. They will then say, can this person afford to pay us back whilst in a recession? So that's the kind of thinking they'll have. They'll be reluctant to give money to startups, which are risky. They'll be frightened to give to people they don't know because of affordability and getting the money back. So I think they're going to be a lot more stringent who they give the money to. I think unless we have lots of inflation, which we won't have because prices have been depressed, because nobody's buying as much as they would do in a COVID. So if we don't have inflation, interest rates won't move up, banks will make less money, so therefore they'll hold back. So I think you're going to have to be really, really good at what you do in terms of trying to raise money. And this is probably where, I mean, fintech are more transactional rather than lending money. They tend to just move money around. They're not really sort of long-term lenders.
So they're not retail. They're not dealing with clients. It's more about the processing. It's more compliance and processing. Yeah.
And just transactional. Very much transactional. How does government change? Well, what we've seen through COVID is the speeding up of the digital economy. We're now seeing that the future is going to be hybrid, physical and digital. I think the high street will change. I think the big boys will disappear. Debenhams have gone. Arcadia have gone. They're gone. We might be going back to 30 years ago when the high street was full of small little shops. So that might change. We're going
to go back to the high street shops now.
Yeah, because the big boys can't compete with the nimble small operators now, because small nimble operators can move very quick. And the big boys can't cope with the digital landscape either.
Excellent. That reminds me of a joke about a mouse and two elephants. So, Lakhi, is it going to be a story like the elephants and the mouse?
Sorry, what is the elephant and the mice? Tell us the story.
Right. So, okay.
By the way, VJ Sal's jokes are really funny.
Right. Okay. It's a Punjabi joke, so I can't take it. It's going to knock out a lot of the audience. They won't be able to understand it. But the end of it is there's a little mouse standing between two big elephants, hiding away. And these two elephants look down at the mouse and say, "Why are you hiding?" He says, "Because I'm the one who's going to get caught at the end of this." It's similar to that. Okay.
Got it.
So really, what we're talking about is there's going to be a change in the economy. So we know that. What are the sound bites coming out of government, Lakhi? What do you see, little sound bites coming out of the horizon in regards to the financial sector, the governmental sector? What do you see the government saying? What are you seeing coming out of the square mile then? Let's say it that way.
I think, to be honest with you, I think there's a tiny bit of optimism compared to the last 5 or 6, 7 months. because a lot of businesses are beginning to see the light at the end of the tunnel. They're writing off until April to June next year. They're writing off any major business coming in, and worst case, they're writing off most of next year. But they've certainly got their hopes high that because of the vaccine, they can turn to some form of normalcy, especially if they have. So I think the Biden news has been quite positive for a lot of businesses which are doing international business, because there's going to be a lot more openness in terms of international trade with China, Hong Kong, Malaysia, Indonesia, these sort of countries which have got a huge amount of trade potential. So that's a positive thing. The second thing is that, like a major thing is that, there's going to be potentially some return to the high street, which will have an impact on, the flow of money. But it'll take, I think it's going to take at least a couple of years for anything substantial to happen for them.
Ninder, can I ask a question? Ninder, on a governmental level, so government policies, what sound bites do you see coming out of Downing Street? What do you think is going to be?
Okay, so they're concentrating on, they're trying to use the word leveling up now. They're trying to spend money on infrastructure. They're trying to spend money on the new green economy. They know now that they're going to have to spend money on retraining. They're going to have to retrain people who are now going to be unemployed. They're spending money on infrastructure, so that gets the economy going. They know they're going to have to nurse the economy back over the next 12 months. So they're not going to raise any taxes, because if you're not making any money, you can't pay taxes anyway. So I think their job is to get the economy recovering to such a place that they can then bring those taxes in and recover some of the money back. But remember, interest rates are virtually zero. Government can borrow a lot of money and not having to pay back with interest, so they can spread the payments. If they're going to do it, now's the time.
Are you saying the mid-term and long-term bonds are going to be extremely lucrative? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so I think they're now adopting 3 to 5. I remember they're probably already thinking about the election that's going to be coming up. So they're going to start putting things in so that by the time the election comes, because the latest data shows that up north, the red wall, as we call it, confidence has gone down in the Tory party because of the way they dealt with COVID. But they've still got a number of years to recover it. So they're going to be trying to do everything right to try and get those votes back, because they want 5 more years of power. So you can see what they're up to.
Okay, so this goes back to what Lakhi said. Somehow, somewhere, there's a bit of manipulation going on when it comes to government and in terms of individuals' strategies. Lakhi, it's the last minute. Can we have your summary on today's discussion?
Yeah, I think on the whole, it's a very positive thing. They've got a vaccine, so it gives people some hope, because certainly being locked up at home and sitting around twiddling your thumbs trying to wait for things to happen is a positive thing. How things are implemented, how effectively they're implemented, is really a question of strategy. So I think government, really is trying its best, but the reality is that governments are usually quite slow and have a lot of bureaucracy to be able to get through to try and be effective. So the question is, if they basically are a bit more strategic in what they do, they could be saving millions of lives. So this is actually probably like one of the most pivotal points for that's to say for this decade in terms of what they could do to make a difference.
Like he's probably talking about a century, but Neil Soha says, good morning and hi, and we want to close with Ninder Singh. Half a minute, sir. Give us your summary. Tell us, is there hope now that the vaccine is going to be released? What do you have to say for 21?
I think 21 is going to be fantastic. I think the year 2022 is going to be unbelievable. I think we started the year with a big problem. We have a solution towards the end of the year. We are now at the beginning of the end of this pandemic. We are at the beginning of the end. I think strap your seatbelt and get ready for an absolutely brilliant 2 years. And the stock market is already telling you we're on our way.
Excellent. Good news from both parties this morning. Thank you very much, sir, for your attendance. Ninder Saab, as usual, excellent information, talking like a mini Boris Johnson, Ninder Singh, and Lakhi Singh, thank you much for your insight into the square mile and what the government and the financial industry's got to say about the COVID and the vaccine. It looks all good, really. We should be looking forward to Ninder Singh Friday again at 8 a.m., 9 a.m. I'll see you guys next week with lots of fresh faces, apparently. Take care, sir.
Take care, guys.